Hello and welcome to my channel. Thank you for joining me today. In today's video we're going to be doing an Easter basket. As we're now approaching that time of year, it's going to be Easter in a few weeks. I thought this would be nice to either make an Easter card or some decoration. And I'm not going to be using any reference today, I'm just doing this out of the head, and it's good now and again just to do something quite illustrative and to use our imaginations a little bit. So you'll see, to begin with, I'm doing a pencil sketch. And I'm trying to keep my arm as free and loose as I possibly can, and to make some nice big sweeping curves and not be too tight with my drawing. And the good thing is, when you're using your pencil to do your initial sketches, you know that you can erase those lines, so you can be quite free with it. So we need to really tailor the style and the materials that we're using, the media that we're using, to our subject. And with something like a basket, it can be quite rustic, it can be quite old, it's obviously handmade and wicker, so you don't want it to look too uniform and too neat and tidy. So keeping a nice sketchy feel to it is what I was after really with this. So I've made some nice big ellipses for the opening of the basket and for the base of the basket, and like I said, kept my arm moving. And it doesn't matter if it's not perfectly symmetrical, it doesn't matter if the handle's a bit skewy, because like I said, it's a natural object, it's a handmade rustic object that wants to look a bit sketchy, and it gives it more of a unique personal feel to you that you've done that drawing from your imagination and you haven't followed a picture, a photograph or any other kind of reference. Having said that, if you've got a basket handy at home that you want to copy from, that's fine too. So, and then the eggs that I've put in, again, just imaginary. Just pile them up on top of each other. I'm hoping that you might be a little bit better than me with your drawing of your eggs, because I've got one or two of them there looking a bit more like lemons than eggs, but never mind. So once I'd done the whole thing in pencil, I then went on top with a fine liner, and I used the Unipin fine liner, which is waterproof and fade proof, and that one was a size 0.5, so it's quite a nice small delicate pen. You get some nice fine lines with that. And I used the sepia one because I thought the colour of the sepia was a little less harsh for the eggs, and it was also a nice colour for the basket. It made sense to use a sepia for the basket rather than a black. But if black's the only one you've got, you could do it in your black pen, or you could just keep to the pencil and just do it in pencil and then add your watercolours and add extra detail with paint if you've not got a pen. So don't feel you have to do this in pen and wash. It was just for me to give you some ideas. But the thing is, once you've got a good solid pencil drawing there, nice and sketchy, and you've finished that, you can go over the top with your pen and you can have a bit of fun adding extra texture and things with that. So you see, when I'm doing something like the curve of the handle, I do it in little short lines, sketchy lines, because it's much easier to draw lots of little lines and join them up than it is to try and do one big sweeping curve. You'll also notice at times that I turn my page upside down. For me, it depends if you're right-handed or left-handed, but for me it's much easier to draw a curve going from right to left than it is from left to right. So I turn the page over to make that easier for me to get that sweep of the pen. So do that when you're painting and when you're drawing. Don't forget, you can move your paper around. It often makes it much easier. So as well as adding some texture and sketchy lines to the basket, I'll cross-hatch them to give you that feel of the wicker, but I also put some extra lines in, extra cross-hatching to give us some shadow. So when you're doing it out of your head, you don't know where the shadow is, you don't know where the light source is, so you're going to be imagining in that. But often the light source is from above. And so if you've got something like the rim of the basket, that's going to be, if it's a little bit lipped on the rim of the basket, that's going to be casting a tiny amount of shadow. But also the basket wants to be round, and the eggs are obviously quite a round shape, and you want to make them feel a little bit 3D. So just giving them that extra bit of shadow with some cross-hatching of the pen is going to make them feel a little bit more 3D and more realistic, even though they're all out of your head and you've not got that reference. So still think about putting shadows and highlights in, even when you're doing something very illustrative out of your head. And I'm going to be keeping this quite simple, just the basket and the eggs, but of course you could expand on this. And what I've done this time, a lot of my videos I tend to speed them up so that you're not getting bored watching every little detail of my painting. But I've left this one in real time. I've not speeded it up at all, just to show you how quickly you can get something down on paper to make a pleasing little picture. but you could have more time on this and you could really expand it. You could alter it all together. I made the eggs just one colour. You could pattern each egg. You could spend considerable time making a nice pattern on each of the eggs, a bit like we did the other week with the tulips actually. If you didn't see that video, I will link that above, but you could do that with the eggs, make them all lovely patterns. You could also add a big bow to the basket, something nice and bright, some ribbon. You could expand it with a background, so your background could be just a plain background, or it could be as if it was out in the garden maybe. So you could put some daffodils in there, or some primula, some grasses. So there's all sorts of things you could do to expand this into a much larger picture. And the lovely thing about that is when it's all completely out of your head, it's so unique to you and personal to you, and you're making your own picture. You're not copying a photograph. So you're making your own artwork and it's unique to you. And I think that's all part of developing your own style as well, because you draw what you want to draw and the ideas that you have. Something might spark an idea, but then it might snowball and you might think, oh yeah, I can expand it in this way and that way. Change the colours to suit yourself. So I just did very bright colours for the eggs, but you could make them much more subtle and harmonious. You could do all sorts of different things. You could add some glitter to this actually. It could be a good way of going a little bit wild with your colours and adding all sorts of bits of sparkle and things to your eggs maybe. Have a bit of fun with it. Make it really nice and bright. The basket itself doesn't have to be basket coloured. It could be another colour. So there's all sorts of ways you could really expand this little basket. So once I'd finished with the ink drawing, it took a little while, as you can see, because I put lots of lines in there, making both those crosshatches make some shadows and the wicker effect of the basket. And you could go and carry on with that in as much depth as you wanted to, really. But once I'd finished with all the ink, I allowed it to dry for a few minutes. So even though it's a pen that's waterfast, you do want to just let it settle on the paper and dry slightly before you go in with your eraser, because occasionally you can smudge it if you do it immediately afterwards. So once that was dry, I went over with the eraser and got rid of all those pencil lines before I came to put my paint on. So the paper itself, I'm not sure if I said at the beginning, the paper, it's a Fabriana mixed media paper. So you could either use a mixed media paper if that's what you've got to hand, or you might like to do this on a watercolour paper. And I would recommend, if you're a beginner, a watercolour paper of 140 pounds, 300 grams, and not pressed is probably the easiest starter paper to use. But whatever paper you've got available, you know, if you've got mixed media paper or any watercolour paper that you've got available. And of course, you don't have to do this in paint. This is something you could quite easily do in crayon or in felt tips, any nice bright colours. You could do this in all sorts of different media. So yeah, have a go with different media. If you've not got any paints, there's nothing to stop you doing this just as a drawing. So once I'd erased all those lines, I then went ahead and put the paint on. So I'll just talk quickly through the colours I used. For the basket, like I said, it's rustic and it's natural. So you want it to be, although you could have a painted basket, I decided I wanted it to be quite natural. So I used the earth colours. I used a raw umber and a burnt umber, so I put quite a watery mix of the raw umber over the whole basket, and a slightly thicker mix of burnt umber just to go over some shadows and give it a little bit of interest. And you'll also notice that with a dry brush or a damp brush, with my brush squeezed out at the end, I also lifted some highlights out. So think about putting some shadow in with a thicker, darker paint, and then also lifting some highlights out. But don't go, when you're doing an ink and wash, you've got that very detailed drawing there, and you've got a very firm foundation of a drawing there. You don't need to go overboard with lots of different colour and detail in your actual paint. By just having a very thin wash of that nice colour to represent the basket, that's enough, because you've still got those lines of your pen showing through, and you don't want to lose that drawing. You know, it's a nice loose sketchy drawing, and you don't want to lose that under lots and lots of thick layers of paint. So keep your paints nice and thin and watercolory effect. So after that, the egg colours themselves were just completely straight from the pan with some water mixed to them. There weren't more than one colour mixed together. There was a Winsor violet, there was one of the pink, ready pinks, I can't just think which ones, a cadmium yellow and a green. So just whatever colours you want with the eggs, you could do each one a different colour, you could do each one pattern, some not. So just have a play about with that, and then that makes it completely individual to you as well. But nice, keep it nice and bright and sunny feeling, nice crisp drawing. You don't want to, you know, it's springtime, we want to have that feeling of spring, we want to have some nice bright colours. And like I said, some daffodils next to this basket would be lovely if you just popped it as if it was outside in an outside setting with some grass around the base. So have a bit of an experiment and a play with it. So I think that's everything I need to say about the drawing. The main thing is keep your arm nice and loose, some nice big circles for the opening of that basket to begin with to keep it really free, and then you can tighten up a little bit with your pen. Keep your pencil drawing free, have a bit of fun with it. It's going to look maybe completely different shape to mine. The handle might be lower, higher, more to one side. It doesn't matter, just keep it a nice rusticy feeling basket with those eggs inside it. So have fun doing that. I'll pop some music on for the rest of the video whilst I put the colours onto these eggs. If there's any questions you want to ask, if you want to put that in the comments below, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. I do apologise if I don't always get back immediately with comments, but I'm sure you'll appreciate I get quite a few, and it keeps me quite busy replying to all those. So I tend to do it once a day, or once every other day at the very least. So I will get back to you, but it just might take a day or two. Okay, but do comment below, because it's also helpful for other people as well. And for those of you that are new to my channel, thank you for joining us here for the first time, and welcome. And if you would like to subscribe, don't forget you can subscribe below, and there's also a little bell there, which means that if you click on the bell, you'll get notifications when my next videos are out. But they're every Monday and Thursday afternoon. Okay, so thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the video, enjoy your painting, and I'll be back with you soon. Bye bye for now.